Hi, my name is Hester and I will be the personal trainer for the following workout session that I worked out for my client Marissa, who will be executing the exercises. While she's doing the exercises, I will spot her, I will see that she doesn't do it too heavy, I will make sure that she doesn't hurt herself. I will also explain the joints that will be used and the correct body posture. I will explain the muscles that she's going to use. My warm-up and cool-down will be exactly the same before and after the exercise. Many people neglect a warm-up and a cool-down, and that is actually very important for an exercise program because a warm-up prepares you physically and mentally for the training session. It will be 10 minutes long, depending on the intensity of the exercise program. And my program is quite high intensity for my client, so she will do it for 10 minutes. She will do 3 sets of jumping jacks and 3 stretches, which will be an overhead shoulder stretch, a hanging back stretch, and a standing hamstring stretch. Stretching is also very important before and after exercises because it helps your muscles to recover quickly after your exercise. My client will do the warm-up now. That will consist of 3 jumping jacks. I will explain the jumping jacks as I go along. I will also do some with her. Feet slightly hip width apart. Feet, then you jump your feet out, hands up and down. Up and down. And then you will do 30 of these exercises. The warm-up is very important because it's the most important component of your training. A warm-up elevates your heart rate and keeps your blood flowing, as well as a cool-down. A cool-down also export waste products that your body builds up during the exercise. It should be a high intensity to make you perspire and to elevate your heart rate. It should not be intense so that you can't do your exercise program. In between, she will rest 30 seconds. I will spot her and check that she did that correctly. Arms up. Jump. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 30 seconds of rest in between. Next one. Jumping jacks is a very good exercise to get your heart on a good way for the exercise and get your blood flowing through your body. Jumping jacks is great for strong bones, and it helps if you have osteoporosis to ease the pain. It helps sparks weight loss, it makes you lose belly fat, and it increases your stamina. It also makes you very cardio fit. It works your calves, arms, legs and core. It stabilizes your core. It reduces your risk of any health issues. Now my client is going to do her stretches, 4 each of 3 seconds long. Our first stretch will be the overhead shoulder stretch that she will just hang forward, keeping her back straight, and just hang for 30 seconds. She will do 4 stretches. I will spot her and check that her back is 90 degrees, heads to the sides, and that she does it with ease. Stretching improves your overall body ability. It increases the blood flow to your muscles, and it will help you with your recovery of your exercise program. And then you will do another one. Forward, arms 30 seconds. Okay, the last and final back stretch. This is a very good back stretch to stretch your back after the exercise program. Back stretch. I will make sure that her legs are straight, that her arms are hanging down, that her neck is in the correct position and her back arched correctly. She will keep the position for 30 seconds. Okay, our next stretch will be the overhead shoulder stretch. I will do the first with my client. Feet width apart, arms up, hands together, reach for the sky, bend over backwards, forward, backwards, keep it little at the back, come back. This she will do for 30 seconds, and in between she will also rest for 30 seconds. This stretch stretches the shoulders and the back. Keep your arms elevated. Down. Second one. Keep your hands elevated. Reach back. Stabilize your core. Our next stretch will be the standing hamstring stretch. Put your foot up on the just go down, keep your knees fixed, touch your toes and stretch for 5 seconds. Next leg, put both legs for 5 seconds with a duration of 30 seconds. So you also will do 4 leg stretches. This is very good for your hamstring stretch after a good leg workout day. Only keep the stretch for 5 seconds. Repeat every leg for 30 seconds. This exercise can also be performed by twisting your torso to the side. I will make sure that my client doesn't stretch to the point of pain. Next leg. Rest for 30 seconds after each set. heart rate back to normal. Rest your muscles. Okay, our third stretch of the hamstring stretch. 5 seconds each leg, 30 seconds per exercise. Stretch before we start our workout program. Rest. Okay. Next leg, 5 seconds each leg, 30 seconds duration. Make sure that your client's positioning is correct. And that concludes our warm-up. Like I said, our cool-down will be exactly the same and will just be recapped at the end of this video. Now our exercise program.
The lateral pull down. Seated at the lateral pull down machine with your knees placed firmly under the knee pads, take an overhand grip that is wider than shoulder width on the lateral bar attached to the pulley on the bar. Arms extended over your head, chest out and lower back arms slightly exaggerated. Pull down the bar towards your chest by depressing the scapula. Use the latissimus dorsi to initiate the movement. Hold the contraction for a moment and then slowly lift the bar up to starting position. The exercise can be done with an underhand grip or with a different type of bar attachment. I will monitor the spine and pelvic positioning. I will cue the scapular depressors and retractors. I will spot the bar if necessary. This is a movement of the upper body that takes place in the coronal plane and mainly uses the muscles of the upper back. The actions are concerned with 3 joints, the shoulder, scapula and elbow. During the downwards phase of the pull down, the shoulder, a ball and socket joint, is formed by the humerus and shoulder girdle. There is adduction brought about the latissimus dorsi and posterior deltoid muscles. At the scapula, there is retraction caused by the trapezius and mainly as a result of the action of the rhomboid muscle. At the elbow, a hinge joint formed by the humerus, ulna and radius. There is flexion brought about principally by the action of the biceps brachii. The downwards movement is a concentric muscle contraction. During the upwards phase at the shoulder, latissimus dorsi and posterior deltoid muscles causes abduction, hip flexors. At the scapula, retraction is caused by the trapezius and elevation mainly as a result of the action of the rhomboid muscle. At the elbow, the biceps brachii causes extension. The upward movement is an eccentric muscle contraction. Dips. This exercise can be done at the dips machine or on 2 straight benches. Place your feet firmly on one bench and your arms extended and locked on the second bench. Keep the body as still and vertical as possible to place emphasis on the triceps during the exercise. If the benches is high enough, then keep the legs straight, otherwise cross your legs. Keep the elbows as close to the sides as possible as you flex them to lower the body down until the upper arms are almost parallel to the floor. Press the hands forcefully down towards the bench and raise the body back up. perform 3 sets of 12 for the desired results. While my client is doing the exercise, I will monitor the scapula and elbows. I will monitor that her abdominal stays engaged. I will keep her elbows at the side. I will spot the bar if she uses the dips machine. I will make sure she does not strain her trapezius muscle. Dips is a movement of the upper body that takes place in the posterior section of the sagittal medial plane and mainly uses the muscles of the upper arms. The actions are concerned with the multi-joint, the shoulder and the elbow. During the upwards phase, the shoulder, a ball and socket joint is formed by the humerus and shoulder girdle. Flexion is brought about by the anterior deltoid muscle, the elbow, a hinge joint formed by the humerus, ulna and radius. Extension is brought about principally by the action of the triceps brachii. The upwards movement is a concentric muscle contraction. During the downward phase at the shoulder, anterior deltoid muscles cause extension. The elbow triceps brachii causes flexion. The downward movement is an eccentric muscle contraction. Show my client how to execute the lying back extension. The lying back extension is performed by lying prone on the floor with the arms extended in front of the shoulders. Elevate the chest and shoulders off the floor as high as possible. Hold the contraction for desired amount of time. My client will do 3 sets of 12 back extensions. Keep your back in an extension, squeeze your glutes. I will cue her lower back. Keep reaching your arms forward. Do not hyperextend your neck. Lying back extensions is a movement of the upper body that takes place in the sagittal medial plane and posterior section and also mainly uses the muscles of the lower back. The actions are concerned in isolation using the spine. During the upwards phase, lower back extensions, there is extension. Brought about the erector spinae muscle. The upward movement is a concentric muscle contraction. During the downwards phase at the spine, erector spinae muscle causes flexion. The downward movement is an eccentric muscle contraction. The seated dumbbell curl. I will show my client how to execute the dumbbell curl exercise. My client will now execute the exercise. Sit at the end of a flat bench or on a low bench with the feet firmly placed on the ground, hip width apart. Hold a pair of dumbbells with an underhand grip and let them hang on either sides of the bench. Curl the dumbbells up towards the shoulders by flexing the elbows. Pause at the top for a movement for a second and then return slowly down to starting position. My client will perform 3 sets of 12 repetitions on each arm. The exercise can be performed alternating dumbbells or together. The exercise can be performed with an underhand grip or rotating the forearm for a hammer curl. The exercise can also be performed on a decline bench. I will monitor the spine, pelvis, scapular positioning, and shoulder and elbow movement. I will cue the biceps. I will spot the forearms or wrists. Seated dumbbell curl is a movement of the upper limbs that take place in a frontal plane and mainly uses the muscles of the arm. The actions are concerned with one joint in isolation, the elbow. During the upwards phase of the dumbbell curl, the elbow, a hinge joint formed by the humerus, ulna and radius, there is flexion brought about principally by the action of the biceps brachii, brachialis and brachiodialis. The upwards movement is a concentric muscle contraction. During the downwards phase, at the elbow, biceps brachialis and brachiodialis causes extension. The downwards movement is an eccentric muscle contraction. My client performed this exercise with ease. Kickbacks with dumbbells. Place the left knee and palm on a flat bench so that the torso is parallel to the floor, while holding onto a dumbbell in the right hand and keeping the right foot flat on the floor. Press the right arm tight against the side of the torso with the upper arm parallel to the floor. Extend the elbow until the arm is fully extended behind the body. Flex the triceps for a second at the top of the movement and then return to the starting position. Perform how many reps necessary for the desired result. My client will do 3 sets of 12 on each side. I will make sure she does not lift her weight too high up. The same exercise can be performed standing with the knees flexed and the tailbone extended. The same exercise can be performed on a cable pulley machine. I will monitor her elbows and scapula. She must keep her abdominals engaged and she must keep her elbows at her sides, and I will spot at the dumbbell. Kickbacks with dumbbell is a movement of the upper limbs that take place in the posterior section of the sagittal medial plane and mainly uses the muscles of the upper arm. The actions are concerned with one joint in isolation, the elbow. During the upwards phase of the kickback, the elbow, a hinge joint formed by the humerus, ulna and radius, there is flexion brought about principally by the action of the triceps brachii. The upward movement is a concentric muscle contraction. During the downwards phase at the elbow, triceps brachii causes extension. The downwards movement is an eccentric muscle contraction. I will spot the bar. I will make sure my client keeps her arms elevated. Adjust the seat, the back and the foot pad of a leg extension machine so that when you sit in it your knees are at the edge of the bench and that your ankles are just below the foot pad rollers. Sit back with your back pressed firmly against the back pad. Grasp the handles of the seat edges behind the hips and keep the upper body stable as the legs extend in a smooth controlled movement until fully extended. Contract the quadriceps at the top of the movement and then slowly lower the weight down to starting position. Perform how many reps necessary for the desired result. Monitor knee flexion. I will cue the quads. Keep lower back flush with the bench. Get a good range of movement. This is a movement of the lower body that takes place in the sagittal medial plane and mainly uses the muscles of the legs. The actions are concerned using single joint the knee. During the upwards phase of the movement, the knee, a hinge joint formed of the tibia, femur, rectus femoris, vastus medialis, vastus lateralis, and vastus medialis muscles causes extension. The upwards movement is a concentric muscle contraction. During the downwards phase at the knee, rectus femoris, vastus medialis, vastus lateralis, and vastus intermedialis muscles cause flexion. The downwards movement is an eccentric muscle contraction. The lying leg extension. Adjust the seat. Place your foot on the foot pad of a leg extension machine so that when you sit in it, your knees are at the edge of the bench and that your ankles are just below the foot pad rollers. Sit back with your back pressed firmly against the back pad. Grasp the handles of the seat edges behind the hips and keep the upper body stable as the legs extend in a smooth, controlled movement until they are fully extended. Contract the quadriceps at the top of the movement and then slowly lower the weight down to starting position. 3 sets of 12 repetitions will be done. I will monitor the knee flexion. I will cue her quads. And I will make sure she keeps her lower back flush with the bench and make sure she gets a good range of motion in her legs. The leg extension is the movement of the lower body that takes place in the sagittal medial plane and mainly uses the muscles of the legs. The actions are concerned using single joint, namely the knee. During the upwards phase of the leg extension at the knee, a hinge joint formed from the tibia and femur, rectus femoris, vastus medialis, vastus lateralis, and vastus intermedialis muscles causes extension. The upward movement is a concentric muscle contraction. During the downwards phase at the knee, rectus femoris, vastus medialis, vastus lateralis, and vastus intermedialis muscles causes flexion. The downward movement is an eccentric muscle contraction. The hip thrusts exercise. Firstly, I will show my clients how to do the hip thrusts exercise. Lies the spine on the floor with the hands extended at the sides and the legs fully extended towards the ceiling. Raise the hips and glutes straight up off the floor by using the abdominals. Hold the position for a second before lowering the hips down to starting position. Perform how many reps necessary for the desired results. My client will do 3 sets of 12 repetitions. This exercise can be performed on a decline bench to make it more challenging. A large ball can be held in between the legs to increase difficulty. I will cue her abdominals. I will make sure she do not strain the neck. I will make sure that she do not drop the legs too far forward. I will spot the hips and I will monitor the pelvis and spine. Our next exercise will be the reverse crunch. I will show Marissa how to do the reverse crunch. Lies the spine on the floor with the hand extended at the side, legs and feet perpendicular to the floor. The hips and knees should form a 90-degree angle. Slowly bring the knees towards the chest, simultaneously lifting the hips and glutes off the floor. Try to maintain the flexion of the knees throughout the exercise. Return to starting position with control. My client will do 3 sets of 12 repetitions. This exercise can be performed on a decline bench to make the exercise more challenging. A large ball can be held in between the legs to increase difficulty. I will monitor the spine and head positioning. I will cue her abdominals. I will make sure she does not strain the neck. And I will make sure she does not drop her legs too far forward. And I will spot her hips. Flat fly with a dumbbell. Lies the spine on a flat bench with feet flat on the floor, toes facing forward. Hold the dumbbells extended with your arms above the chest and palms facing one another. The elbows will slightly be bent. Maintain the slightly fixed elbow throughout the exercise. Slowly lower arms out to the side until the wrists are lowered to about shoulder level. Then bring the arms back to the starting position, keeping the same shape of the arm and wrist. Perform how many reps necessary for the desired results. My client will do 3 sets of 12 repetitions each. I will monitor the spine and scapular positioning, the shoulder and elbow motions. I will spot under the elbows or on the wrists. I will cue the anterior deltoid and upper pectorals. My client will do 3 sets of 12 repetitions. Flat flies with dumbbell is a movement of the upper body that takes place in a transverse plane and mainly uses the muscles of the chest. The actions are concerned with a single joint in isolation, the shoulder. During the downwards phase of the flat flies with dumbbell, the shoulder, a ball and socket joint that is formed by the humerus and shoulder girdle. Horizontal extension brought about by the pectoralis major and minor and anterior deltoid muscles respectively. The downwards movement is an eccentric muscle contraction. During the upwards phase at the shoulder, pectoralis major and minor and anterior deltoid muscles causes horizontal flexion. The upwards movement is a concentric muscle contraction. Flat bench press with barbell. Lies the spine on the bench with the feet flat on the floor facing forward. Hands holding the barbell with an overhand grip that will be placed on the barbell slightly wider than shoulder width. Extend the barbell straight up. Slowly lower it towards the chest, keeping the elbows extended out towards the sides. When the bar is lowered onto the chest, press the bar away from the chest, using the explosive fast movement to straighten the arms. My client will do 3 sets of 12 repetitions. I will monitor the spine and scapular positioning, shoulder and elbow motion. I will spot under the elbows or on the wrist. The flat bench press is a movement of the upper body that takes place in the transverse plane and mainly uses muscles of the chest. The actions are concerned with 3 joints, the shoulder, scapula and elbow. During the downward phase of the bench press, the shoulder, a ball and socket joint that is formed by the humerus and shoulder girdle, horizontal extension brought about the pectoralis major and anterior deltoid muscles respectively. At the scapula, there is a retraction caused by the setaris anterior. At the elbow, a hinge joint formed by the humerus, ulna and radius, there is flexion brought about principally by the action of the triceps brachii. The downwards movement is an eccentric muscle contraction. During the upwards phase, the shoulder, pectoralis major and anterior deltoid muscles causes horizontal flexion. At the scapula, protraction is caused by the setaris anterior. At the elbow, the triceps brachii causes extension. The upwards movement is a concentric muscle contraction. Over lateral raise. Stand with the feet hip distance with a flex in the knees. Hold a pair of dumbbells in front with the palms facing towards each other. Bend forward from the hips, keeping the tailbone out and the lumbar spine in an extended position throughout the exercise. Allow the arms to hang straight down from the shoulders. Lift the dumbbells up and out towards the sides of the body. Pause for a second at the top of the movement before lowering down to the starting position. Perform 3 sets of 12 repetitions. The same exercise can be performed lying on an incline bench or large ball single-handed or using both arms together. Monitor the posterior deltoid. Keep the abdominals engaged. Keep your back in an extension. Keep your knees slightly flexed. Posterior bent over delt with dumbbell is a movement of the upper limbs that take place in a transverse plane and mainly uses the muscles of the shoulder. The actions are concerned with one joint in isolation, the shoulder. During the outwards phase of the bent over delts, the shoulder, a ball and socket joint is formed by the humerus and shoulder girdle. There is a transverse extension brought about by the posterior deltoid muscles. The outwards movement is a concentric muscle contraction. During the inwards phase at the shoulder, posterior deltoid muscles cause transverse flexion. The inwards movement is an eccentric muscle contraction. I will show my client how to execute the exercise. With the knees slightly flexed and the feet hip width apart, grasp the dumbbells shoulder width apart, let them hang down towards the ground. Without swaying, slowly flex the elbows to pull the bar towards the shoulders. Pause at the top of the movement for a second and then slowly return the bar to starting position. Perform how many reps necessary for the desired result. The exercise can be performed with a barbell or dumbbells. The same exercise can be performed at the cable machine with a straight bar or with a rope. I will monitor my client's spine, pelvis, scapular positioning, and shoulder and elbow movement. I will cue the biceps. I will spot the forearms or wrists. The bicep curl is a movement of the upper limbs that take place in a sagittal medial plane and mainly uses the muscles of the arm. The actions are concerned with one joint in isolation, the elbow. During the upwards phase of the bicep curl, the elbow, a hinge joint formed by the humerus, ulna and radius, there is flexion, brought about principally by the action of the biceps brachialis and brachiodalis. The upwards movement is a concentric muscle contraction. During the downwards phase at the elbow, biceps brachialis and brachiodalis causes extension. The downwards movement is an eccentric muscle contraction. This is a recap of the cool down. At the beginning of the video, I did explain why a cool down is important and why you should have a cool down. My cool down is exactly the same as my warm up. Stretching is very important before and after exercising. Here, my client Marissa is doing the overhead shoulder stretch. She will repeat the stretch 3 times to get a good stretch around the shoulders and upper back. I will help my client with the correct positioning. Hold the hands together with the arms elevated above the head, pushing the arms upwards and backwards. When the arms are fully extended, hold the position for 20 seconds. Do not stretch to the point of pain. Here I'm showing my client the standing hamstring stretch. This stretch is an easy stretch to perform just about anywhere to stretch the hamstring muscles. I will spot my client to see that her knees slightly stay flexed. She will do 20 seconds on each leg for 3 times. During the stretching, I will monitor my client to see that her body composition is correct. Stand on one leg and place the opposite leg straight on a bench, aerobic step or chair. Lean forward towards the leg to feel the stretch in the hamstring muscle. Hold for 10 seconds before repeating on the opposite leg. This exercise is good for stretching your hamstrings after a good leg day. Many people neglect to cool down at the end of a training session. A cool down actually recovers and helps prevent some of the muscle stiffness and soreness you might otherwise experience after you've been exercising. It reduces the adrenaline flow in the blood. And it's just a good way to stretch your muscles. A good stretch can reduce the chances of dizziness or fainting. Cool down aid in the dispensation of lactic acid. Here my client is doing the hanging back stretch. This is a lovely stretch that stretches the posterior deltoid and upper back area. It is a relaxing stretch. She will repeat it 3 times for 20 seconds each. She will keep her arms straight and the feet firmly on the floor, hip width apart. Grip either a pole or a weight with the hands at shoulder height. Push the hips out behind and lean your weight onto the object that you want to hold on to. Hold the position for 10 to 20 seconds and return to starting position. With all your stretches, you don't have to stretch so that you feel pain. It has to be easy on your body. Now my client is going to do the jumping jacks. I am showing her how to execute it correctly. Jumping jacks is a very good exercise to stretch your calf muscles. It stabilizes your core movement. The rectus and transversus abdominis gets a good workout, as does your obliques and hip flexors. Feet little more than hip distance apart, arms at the side, jump your feet out to sides while raising arms to level above head. Go to the starting position. Do 3 sets of 30. It's also a good arm and leg workout and your core workout, and it boosts your cardio health. My client loved this workout very much.